Michael Rudisill took an indirect path to Campbell University, but after he arrived in Harnett County in 2010, he made the place home for more than a decade. A standout student athlete and starting linebacker, Michael became a leader on and off the football field and across campus over his 4 seasons with the Fighting Camels. So much so that he stuck around to add master's degrees in education and divinity to his undergraduate degree in psychology. Along the way, he served as football team chaplain, worked as an admissions counselor for the medical school, and truly found his career and calling. Now Rudi works at Duke University in career services, helping the next generation of college students prepare to transition into the next phase of their lives. My name is Stan Cole, class of 1987, and this is the next installment of Tales from the Creek, where we visit with the people who've made this place special over the years. I'm delighted to be joined today by Campbell football alum Michael "Rudi" Rudisill. Welcome to Tales from the Creek, Rudi, and thanks for taking the time to visit with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I think this is the first I've been back in a couple years, and like we talked about before, I'm chasing that 14-month-old, almost now 15-month-old around, and it's nice to be back.
Rudi, let's just start at the beginning. Tell us about your family, growing up in the Charlotte area, and how you got started in organized sports.
Yeah, that's tied deeply to my nickname. Growing up in Southeast Charlotte, Providence Road area, down into Matthews. Some people now know Matthews as this budding town just outside the city, and for me, it was home, and it's where I played rec sports all around that area. My fifth grade football coach could not pronounce my last name, and so Rudisill was incredibly hard, I guess, for him. So he finally just gave up one day and started calling me Rudy. And I think it was that sense of like, oh, you like me enough to come up with a nickname for me and to keep after me that, hey, I like this football thing. I like running around a little bit.
So that wasn't tied necessarily into Rudy Rudiger of the Notre Dame in the movie fame, the walk-on player back in the '70s, but it was more, to try to make sense of your name.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me too, as I got older, as I rewatched the movie Rudy, and as people kept saying, "Oh, like the movie," I'm always like, I hope I'm a little bit better than he was. I hope I played the game a little bit better. Now, I think he did leave a lasting impact. Of course, there's a movie, but for me, I think I wanted to be a little bit better of an athlete than he was.
What was, life growing up? Tell us a little bit about your family and, what did it look like? Did you play sports all year long, or what was it like?
For me, I had really no concept of like the sports scene in Charlotte. I had a lot of friends surrounding me in school that were baseball players. Charlotte's a really big area for developing baseball players that go on to professional sports or even major colleges. And we actually couldn't afford to join one of the premier leagues that was right near us. And so at the time, I never played baseball. I played soccer for a youth Christian league that just allowed me to actually Frank Reich.
Mhm.
His daughters were playing around the same time as I was in that league. And for me, like I enjoyed being around sports. I enjoyed going every day. One of my earliest mentors, Mike Zubel, was my coach for youth soccer all the way into youth football later on down the road. And Charlotte was interesting. It was a place for families. It was a place where people grew into this concept of like, hey, you have 2 to 3 kids, 2.5 kids, and you have this house, and you go to school, you play sports, you join clubs, and then you go on to a major college. And I'm a first gen college student, and so my family was thinking, hey, like this is a great place for us to settle, to find direction, and figure out what we're going to do. And this seems like it's the right thing to do. So for me, I got plugged in and playing soccer first. I played, ultimately got involved in baseball later on. As we grew. My dad was a firefighter for 32 years.
Wow.
So he was always 24 hours on, 24 hours off, and he did everything in his power to make it to our games and make it to my games. I have an older brother who we played baseball with for a bit. And actually that's where my first connection to Campbell came from. Um, Will Philippi and I
Mhm.
were on the same baseball team, I believe, I want to say fourth grade. Um, And Will and my brother are the same age, and so we were playing youth sports together. And of course, we never knew at the time that he would end up at Campbell University and let me know about it down the road when I was looking to transfer. But for me, Will was an additional brother. We all hung out together. My brother Will and I remember actually one time we were uh, at his house before football practice because we later went on to do like rec football together. And we had a bunch of McDonald's and then we had to get to practice. And I remember just feeling so sick running around the field for warmups from eating a ton of McDonald's. So shout out Will for that. But it, I was very fortunate to grow up in an area that provided me with a ton of opportunity, and that's why my parents drove me there. Ironically enough, my mom is the biggest football fan. She's way bigger than my dad.
Mhm.
She's the one that got me into football. So while playing soccer and baseball, she always had Carolina Panthers on the TV. And I remember Delano Little talking about Lambeau Field and the Panthers in the
Mhm.
'96 playoffs and going to Lambeau Field in the frozen tundra and what that looked like. And that's where the mystique of the game began to drive me to it and thinking about all these greats that have played it. I remember rehearsing moves from Barry Sanders from old running back tapes. I remember trying to enact those when I got onto the field. And of course, it's youth football, so nobody is doing anything crazy.
So were you a linebacker, running back, or what did you play growing up?
I actually started as safety.
Oh, wow.
I was a safety on my first ever football team, and
Mhm.
then by my second year, I was playing some running back slash fullback. I was always a little bit more huskier and wider, so they wanted to put me at fullback and help block. And then I never really got to playing defense until probably around sixth grade.
Mhm.
Other than that safety position, didn't seem like defense, but like true like defensive position when you actually kind of have an awareness of what's going on was sixth grade. I started playing some DB, some corner, and that was fun. I'm not the fastest person, and so, eventually they moved me inside to the box probably by 8th grade. I was playing, linebacker, but that's finally when I was, like, truly a defender, the way that I saw it.
Mike, you ended up earning all conference honors your senior year at Providence. And when was it you thought, hey, this might be possible at the next level? When did you start having your eyes on playing football in college?
It's funny, I tell my wife this all the time, and if our son wants to play sports one day, I tell her, "Hey, this is a mindset thing."
Mhm.
It's something that I thought about from the moments of watching the Green Bay Packers and Carolina Panthers in the playoffs, that I knew that I wanted to do this, and I set that as a goal. I
And how old were
want
you at that time?
At that time, I was 6.
Oh, wow.
And I knew I had to have a mindset of competitiveness, that
Mhm.
there was going to be a lot of people that told me I couldn't do something, that didn't believe in me, and I had to have some self-belief as well, to make that happen. And there was moments, of course, I didn't believe in myself. There was moments where it was really difficult. It was moments where I wasn't the starter. I think that first year I played football, yeah, I played a lot of defense, or I played a lot of safety, but at the same time, I wasn't always on the field. Same thing, 5th grade, I started to stand out a little bit more. Middle school was really rough. I mean, I was 7th grader on the middle school team, and I didn't play that often, and I really was just another jersey number out
Mhm.
there at practice. And so I always had that mindset. My freshman year going to college, I didn't or going into high school, I didn't expect, my high school coach to know me. I knew I had to make a name. I actually got mono during the
Okay.
first season, and, I was like 135 pounds. But what set the tone was that spring, I was 185
Wow.
pounds. Um, and that was like, "I can make this happen. I know I can do this, even if nobody else believes me." I looked at people around me and I said, "I can do what they're doing." And I continue to have that drive. And I think at that point, the work that I put in the off season, the coaches saw and they really began to believe in me. I had a really good sophomore year. And I wasn't one of those kids that was playing varsity my freshman year of high school. But I knew I had the potential to at least be out there. And so I was playing varsity, part-time, my sophomore year with Will Philippi was actually a senior on that team,
Mhm.
and we made it to the playoffs, and we played Richmond County in the playoffs, and I still remember that game because I had to block Melvin Ingram, and I ran smack into him, and he didn't move, and I was like, "Yeah, this guy's different." And I was still only about 185, 190 pounds at the time, and I knew it wasn't a deterrence. It was a this is a mindset thing. This is
Mhm.
who I've always been. I have a weird sense of like confidence in myself in order to make this happen. And that's kind of where it began of like thinking, hey, I can go do this.
From Charlotte, instead of taking a 3-hour drive east or almost 3-hour drive east to Bowie's Creek, you took a detour and went north to Boone. Tell us a little bit about what drew you to Appalachian State, other than the fact that at the time they were a national power at the FCS level, right?
Yeah. Uh, Very fortunate again. My family had always spent a lot of time in the mountains. We had always gone camping. My mom's brothers and sisters had gone up to App for a few years, and so there was a bit of the mountain was in us. It's who we were.
Mhm.
I remember actually playing a football game in sixth grade, and I performed really well. And we actually had just spent the weekend in the mountains, and they joked that it must have been the spring water
Mhm.
that caused me to play so well. And I was like, well, maybe. But Boone was a very special place for me. The city, the allure of the Mountaineers. I think it was going into my senior year, they beat Michigan.
Right.
Um, and seeing that team on a national scale, I think there was an awareness of like what might be a good fit for me as someone that was underestimated. Going to a school that often took chances on people that were underestimated, and getting up to the mountain and actually getting a chance and a shot to go play was truly a dream. And going down the tunnel and hearing them yell "App State" across the stadium,
Mhm.
uh, that was a draw in itself, and I wanted a place that was going to invest in me and give me a chance to be someone that I already knew I could potentially be.
So you go to Boone, redshirt, a year, and then you make the decision to come join a relatively new program at Campbell. Tell us about that transition and what ultimately led you here.
Yeah, that I think it's funny because you asked about Charlotte, and I kind of talked about understanding who I was in that area and kind of who Charlotte kind of wanted you to be the city and how it develops you out. Like I said, that family of four, that traditional familial unit, and playing sports and growing up and being competitive and going to a major university. I had that mindset. I had that concept of who I wanted to be. My parents never had expectations that I do any of those things of being like a star athlete or anything like that, but they always encouraged me to be the best version of
Mhm.
myself and to be competitive and then also to really dive into whatever I do and give it my best effort. And so for me at the time, I didn't necessarily know who I was outside of the game. And I think when I got to App, I started to figure out that I didn't know much about myself, that I had invested so much in who I thought I was in this game that I realized there was much more to who I was as a person. And I didn't have to fit the mold of what everybody else was doing from my high school and where they graduated and what they went to. I had a high school class of like 510
Mhm.
students, and I still remember my class rank was 110, and that wasn't good enough for me.
Right.
And I know a lot of people are like, "That's great,"
Yeah.
or "I would love to do that." And I think for me, I was like, "No, I had friends that were scoring near perfect scores on the SAT and are going to Carolina and going to NC State." And I'm like, Am I capable of doing that?" And so I think my picture of the world began to evolve and shift and think, all right, you need to figure out who you are.
Mhm.
And you need to figure out why you're really involved in this. Yes, football is a vessel for you to explore and to engage in something you love, but it's not everything about you. And is this place going to give you the best opportunity to do that?
Mhm.
And I didn't think it was. So I called my high school coach, probably towards the end of that first season. I had been there since, I would say late June,
Mhm.
for second summer session with the football team, and we had played through the season. We were on our way to becoming conference champs, and so most people would have thought, "Hey, why the heck are you even considering leaving?" And I'm like, "This is more important at this point that I figure out who I am." And I called my coach, and he's just shuffling through business cards of coaches, and he pulls out one, and he says Campbell and Will Philippi. I knew my former teammate had gone to
Mhm.
Campbell, and I was like, "Give him a call." Actually, had not returned their call when they were recruiting me out of high school,
Wow.
and it was Coach Mariotti. That had I remember his voice on the answering machine, and I was like, "Nah, that's not for me." But this time, for whatever reason, it stuck out.
Mhm.
And I think it's because the familiarity of somebody that I knew, but I didn't realize that it was gonna give me the chance to be the person that I knew I could be.
What are some of your best memories of your undergraduate career here, Rudy? I guess let's cover the on field or the football stuff first.
Yeah. I think it's first the locker room. There was unique characters always in the locker room that made it for what it was. Um, Immediately I felt embraced by the people there. I think of like Big Randall Herring. I think of
Mhm.
Milton Brown. I think of Demetrius Jenkins. I and I think of guys like John Alford, two that are no longer with us, and I think about the impact and legacy that they leave behind them. Those are the types of people that came through Campbell.
Mhm.
Those are the people that made a lasting impact. I think of Johnny Rogers, my roommate, will be my lifelong roommate, and Vince
Mhm.
Manto, who I had came up to visit me just recently, and Chad McMichael. Those guys made a difference in my life and in the locker room. The jokes that we shared. Hassan Williams, I remember just being a character. I remember, oh gosh, there's so many Braden Smith and his leadership and the things
Mhm.
that he taught me. Chop, the old heads, the way the way they would go about leading this team and taking it from the ground up. I never saw myself as a person that was a part of the foundation of this program. I
Mhm.
always saw those older guys of Chop, of Soup, Andy Johnson, being more of the leaders in the room. Daniel Polk, the way that they controlled Mike Striffler, I could go on and on. Lee Stanley, yeah, Milton Brown. They established this foundation that I thought I was just going to get a hand in to help build a little bit further. To they've got the foundation, I can build the sticks around it to build up the side and the walls, and we can go from there. And so going into that locker room to see their leadership, but also to see the sense of humor they brought with them, to see the jokes that we had in the locker room. I think about the long Campbell walks all the way from Lundy Fetterman
Mhm.
to the field. I think about pregame meals with Coach Link. I To this day, I'm incredibly grateful for first Coach Mariani giving me a second chance, even though I didn't return his call the first time, but then Coach Link believing in me, and believing that I was a guy that could make a difference in the roster. And um, every single time we did our pregame meal, we had this tradition of just kinda being quiet, but Coach Link knew that, "Hey, like, we gotta loosen up a little bit, we gotta have some
Mhm.
fun," and so he would start telling stories, and every time he told stories, he didn't wanna be too loud, and so he would start to lean in on the table, and I'm gonna tell you, I actually never heard one of his stories because he would speak so quietly,
Mhm.
but all it would start like this, and then he would just start pounding the table, and so we're all, like, laughing, shaking our heads, but that was the type of guy he was, is he was a guy that the players respected, that enjoyed being around, and I think that's what made you buy in. It made you buy into this familial unit. As much as the head coach is a leader, you also look to your position coaches to form that bond amongst the group that you build, and so you wanna have competitiveness in that group, but you also have to keep that group together. You have to continue to push one another in that group to be the best versions of yourself rather than thinking, "I'm taking that spot, I'm taking that spot, I'm taking that spot of that person in front of me." It's more of just, "Hey, I'm gonna be better because this person could take my spot, yes, but also they're making me better because I see them improving every day." And I think Coach Link did a good job of instilling that within us to compete with one another to make sure that we were continuing to grow in who we were.
Rudy, you mentioned a couple of names, and Daniel Polk and Lee Stanley, like you, they started out at larger public schools and then found their way to Campbell. Did y'all was that something that and Braden Smith, of course, transferred in from, SMU. Was that something that was y'all just easily, transition and were drawn to this place just because of, the opportunity that was here?
Yeah, my my jersey number or my locker number at, App State was 101.
Mhm.
That's not a number, you're never gonna see that on the field.
Right.
I never had an established number. I didn't need an established number when I got to Campbell because as soon as I got there was people encouraging me, felt like I was a part of something that was bigger than myself, that I really feel like I could walk down the hall and I would see a teammate across campus, and whether or not I remember the name, they remembered me, and that was important to me.
You mentioned a jersey number. You wore number 32 initially when you came to Campbell, of course. And my biased Baltimore Colts view of the world, Mike Curtis is the greatest middle linebacker ever to play the game. Apologies to Dick Butkus and others, Mike Singletary, and some others they might have think. And of course, Mike Curtis, of course, came from Duke, where you now work. But at Duke, Mike was a fullback. He wore number 33. When he got to the Colts, he wore number 32.
Mhm.
Enough about me, but was there any significance in that, or is that just the number they gave you?
There was no significance. I was 33 in high school, and that just happened to be my number that was available, and so I was one of those people that wanted consistency and a little bit of superstition surrounding, "Hey, like, I had this number when I first got here, so I'm gonna try to stick with it." And then I was 32 33 was actually taken by Will Phillippe
Mhm.
when I got here, so I just went ahead and took 32.
What about some of the big you arrived in time as that first, what we call the 5-year class, the first they came in, and then the foundation guys were seniors in 2011, and, um, the team had a winning record for the first time. What were we could tell the difference from the press box, um, from year 1 to year 2, just because our interior line grew into men
Yeah.
from high school guys. I don't wanna call them boys because they were big enough, but, a year of nutrition, of training, of weight training, of learning, and then, you know, all of a sudden after year 1 when they really pushed around, especially in the second half of games. Then year 2, lost a lot of close ones, and the same thing maybe happened in year 3, and then in year 4, it all kinda came together. What do you remember from that 2011 team? Any highlights in particular? Beating San Diego sure was a big one.
Yeah. But I don't know if people know this, and probably not to this day, but I think that was the first time anybody had stormed a field at Campbell University.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a thing back in the 30s and 40s
Exactly.
when they had football here, you know?
And so I remember that. I remember, the clock running out, and all of a sudden I was like, "That's a student next to me. What's going on?" I was like, "I can't believe that." Of course, there were individual plays in that game too. I remember running around the end and sacking the quarterback or getting a half a sack. I think it might be credited to me as. I remember interception towards the end of the game, but really, I remember just the victory and what it meant for the program. Um, Individual effort was, yes, great, but at the end of the day, for the first time, we felt relevant.
Mhm.
We felt like people looked at us and said, "Oh, that's just not another, W on the win column for our team against Campbell." It was a, "Oh, we've gotta take these guys seriously. They've turned around and they've built something here." A lot of that goes definitely credit to those foundational guys, to leadership, to Dale Steele and what he had. Not a lot of people talk about building a program and understanding, like, "Hey, we're building a non-scholarship football program in Division 1." And the amount of competition, the type of recruiting that you have to do at that level, and then to put it all together and to make us competitive with teams that have been doing this for a few decades, that's crazy. To think that someone could truly put together a roster of guys, develop them out enough to get to the point where they're competing with people who already had those systems. You think about Marist had been in that league,
Mhm.
San Diego had been in that league, had Harbaugh as a coach.
Mhm.
Um, Even like Dayton had their set system of guys if they could recruited and developed. Drake, same thing. And so we're bringing Campbell in here and we're recruiting kids from the Southeast, trying to get them on par with these guys that already had established football programs, and knew how to recruit without scholarships, knew how to
Mhm.
recruit in their area and find the right transfers, find the right people to build up their program. And so Dale Steele had to put that together. Greg Williams had to put that together. Art Link, Landon Mariani, Oscar Olanichak, all those guys had to fathom, like, what does it look like to develop young men, 18-year-olds, to get to the point that we can compete with people that have been doing this for years.
You've mentioned, and so many football players and almost every sport that you will talk to or have a larger coaching staff, they talk about assistant coaches and how important they are. But let's just take 3 people, that you, uh, worked under, your head coaches. Jerry Moore, a legendary coach at Appalachian State. Dale Steele, who brought football back here, built the foundation of the program, was just inducted into the Hall of Fame here a year ago. And then Mike Minter, who came in for the next phase. And of course, Mike had been a Super Bowl safety for the Carolina Panthers, your favorite team. Tell us just a little bit about what made each of those men special in your life.
Yeah. I took some time figuring this was coming and thinking back on all these. And I think for any athlete right now that might be listening to this, I want to encourage you to think you are going to think differently about your coach 10 years from now.
Hmm.
You're going to realize different things about your own life and your own athletic journey. And you are going to realize lessons that you hoped you would have realized 10 years sooner. And you're going to find new appreciation for who they were. Because in the moment, you may not always appreciate things. You may not always understand things. It's hard when you're looking at a leader and you don't necessarily know why things happen or what's going on. As I saw some transition at Campbell, but I do encourage you that reflect, think about the sacrifice all of these people are making for you, to make you better, to help develop you. And so I think about Jerry Moore. Jerry Moore took time to know my name. And for someone with his legacy, that meant a lot to me. I remember when the best conversation happened to be when I was letting him know that I wanted to transfer and asking for a release from App State. But he said, I think you can do well here, but I also want you to go somewhere where you feel like you can flourish. And I want you to find whatever that home is. I selfishly want to keep you. I want you to continue to grow and develop. But for him, he was one of those people that when he entered a room, that it got quiet. That's some people just have a presence about them,
Hmm.
and leaders develop that over time. And that was truly special for me to see someone with that legacy and that amount of respect that he commanded the space. He also was someone that stepped back. I don't know if he was like this earlier in his career because I called him towards the tail end. He was someone who stepped back and empowered his seniors and other leaders that had identified themselves on the team to actually do the work and to speak out for him because they knew his vision for the team. And he really invested a lot in people to do it. I thought that was a key leadership quality is like he truly saw, I saw Simon Sinek, the great leadership coach out
Hmm.
there right now talking about this. When you're a leader, you're in charge of people, but like think of it as like it is your charge to develop people out.
Hmm.
And that's really how I view Jerry Moore was he saw it as his charge to develop individuals into becoming men and to be leaders and to be able to speak out and have the things that he knew would help to the program all around. Dale Steele, like I mentioned, given this hand of this program, non-scholarship in Bowie's Creek, North Carolina, and finding a way to make this work, there was going to be bumps. There was definitely going to be bruises. There was going to be things that players are like, "Why can't we have it like App State? Why can't we have it like this other program, this big time school? We're over here like looking at the gear that we have, and we want different type of gear." And rightfully so, I think in a time where social media is becoming more popular, that's hard to believe. Also, is that
Hmm.
I was in college at a time that social media wasn't very big, but it's starting to become more prominent, and we see gear and jerseys and what other universities are doing, and we start to compare ourselves to that. And so Dale Steele's having to organize around all of this, and he's having to take people and to believe in a message at a university that really hasn't had that message or that belief in 40 years in the 30s and 40s. You know, having someone that was able to say, all right, there's going to be a lot of flack for anything that I do. And there's going to be a lot of judgment from the team trying as I try to map this out. I wouldn't want that job.
Hmm.
And that's what it taught me is leaders do jobs that people don't necessarily want.
Wow.
He was able to do that. Did I understand that as a 20-year-old? No. And that's not saying there's not plenty of bright 20-year-old and you are not capable of understanding things like that. For me, that was something I didn't understand. I didn't understand the full scale and sacrifice that he had to make. And that was another thing is the sacrifices that you have to make in order to build something. Um, for Coach Mentor, he gave me a chance to transition into an adult outside of being a college student. You grow into, I think, an adult in many ways in college, and you learn life lessons and all that good stuff. And my last season, I was a 23-year-old redshirt senior, with bad knees, trying to stay on the field and just play one more season of football. Coach Minter gave me the chance after that to stay on staff in a volunteer capacity, then ultimately moving on to more of a unofficial graduate assistant role, and then ultimately chaplain of the team. But in that time, he let me just explore. Not everybody has a chance in life to do that. If I could look to any 20-year-old and say, "Hey, you're not gonna be in your full-time career the first step that you take right out of undergrad," I would hit that point home over and over again. I
Mhm.
work at a very competitive university where people think, "Hey, I've gotta pick my career. Everybody's so successful around me." And I'm like, "You're gonna jump around. It's fine." And you need to do that because it helps you determine the next steps that's gonna put you in the right place one day that to live out who you are truly meant to be. Mike Minter allowed space for that. We don't give enough credit for people who allow people to have space to explore, and that's super important in life. It's a super important leadership standpoint to give people a little bit more space.
Rudy, you were a psychology major. Did any of that come in, were you thinking big thoughts and during your undergraduate days, or did that open the doors to some big thoughts?
Yes, I was always interested in psychology, just because of the counseling aspect and human relationships and understanding who we are as people and what makes us tick, but also how it meant or how it allowed us to develop as athletes, as leaders. And so at first I did look at sports psych and thinking that was something I wanted to do, but then I realized on a larger scale of understanding people and what we were hoping to do, like diving into psychology was definitely something I wanted to pursue further. Now I didn't know how to do
Mhm.
that. I think for me, during my time, I had my sports leaders, my influential people that were encouraged me to be the best version of myself, but Campbell also opened the door to people that were there to mentor me, outside of who I was as an athlete. And so I think of people like Betsy Dunn Williams. I think of Melinda Ashcraft. I think of people that gave me a chance to just have conversations to explore things I wanted. Dr. Gary Taylor, talking about the things that he enjoyed about psychology. Dr. Street in the psychology department and encouraged me to actually do research. And what does that mean? I went and presented at a conference as a 23-year-old and like, "Oh, this is actually interesting to me." I didn't come from a family who explored that side of things. That's not to say what they did wasn't valuable, but it was more of we just had no familiarity with that.
Mhm.
And so for the first time, I was engaging with this academic side and exploration of not only self, but also potential of other people and who we are and how we connect and how we grow and how we learn together. And so many people gave me that chance to do that at Campbell.
The average college sports fan, I truly believe, unless you've ever worked in it or been a part of it, um, doesn't understand the time commitment that it takes for, yeah, not to mention the staff and the support staff, but the athletes in general. You're expected to go to class, you're expected to keep your grades up, you're expected to train in formal practices with the team, and then you're all this other. You've got to rest, recovery, nutrition, anything else. Somehow you find some time to sleep. Rudy, you were all academic student for in the PFL. The College Sports Information Directors selected you as academic all district. And outside of the books and stuff, you were heavily involved in the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, another of a bunch of other different ways, even athletics marketing and academic services. Um, I'm always curious, how did you make the time, find the time to do all of that?
Couple of people, to mention here again, I think Will Phillippe would always tell me not to reinvent football, and he would tell me not to, like, overcomplicate things. So, 1, I tried not to overcomplicate
Mhm,
things. Where could I go? What could I do? Then the Teddy Roosevelt quote from that Braden Smith always would talk about of, like, "Do what you can with what you have where you're at."
mhm,
Um, that's essentially what I tried to do. this is where I was naturally leaning in my time. I wanted to devote my time where I was with what I had. I had an opportunity to help out with FCA. I had an opportunity to get an education. So what am I doing with that? How am I spending my time? Um, what was it actually helped me in my brain have every aspect of the day planned out from 7 a.m. on, sometimes 6:30 a.m., just depending on what year I was and what weights I got scheduled with.
Mhm.
Uh, Knowing that having a routine gave me a sense of purpose at the time, and really organizing my day in that way helped me to understand later, of course, like what I felt like was a greater sense of purpose. And we are in a lot of ways who we surround ourselves with. Not in, I think, the classical parenting sense of, like, be careful of the company you keep it, but in the sense of, like, everybody has a story to share with us, and everybody has, something they can offer us, whether we realize it that in that moment. And so, I also just naturally wanted to be involved with things that just worked. So if I was gonna volunteer with SAC, okay, then, like, all right, what can I do while I'm here at SAC? I can raise my hand for that. I got 10 minutes for that. I can show up for Relay for Life, walking around the field for a bit. I'm gonna be on campus. What else am I doing? That's why I'm here, is to engage with this community, to engage with these people, and I wanted to do that. I think in my mind, I didn't necessarily think of it that way until later on. I was like, "Oh, I just did that because it was available to me,
Mhm.
and I wanted to take an opportunity." So if you're listening, do that. Just if it's available to you, you might as well try it out.
And I understand that you found your faith, really while you're here at Campbell.
Yes. Uh, Campbell, in a lot of ways, helped me to explore questions that I had always had my whole life. I always joke that I was raised in a mix of Episcopalian Methodist family, and at times my faith was all over the place, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to define it. And then I began to be surrounded by people who really just encouraged me to view other people as people to love and to care for. That was the aspect of faith that attracted me first, is I felt a sense of community and belonging, and I enjoyed being a part of that. I enjoyed feeling like I had a home base even though I wasn't at home. Um, and that developed a new home for me. And so I began to explore and engage in these questions and seek guidance from people who had experienced this or had been in their faith much of their life and had different wisdom to pass along to me, from our team chaplain, Carrie Snelling, all the way over to leaders like Paul Constantine, and of course Braden Smith. Can't mention him enough, of people that truly led by their faith and what they were doing and what it meant to them. That made an impression on me. My roommate Johnny Rogers, same kind of thing. He made an impression on me. Vince Manto, if you've ever met the guy, is the most positive person, happy person that you could ever meet. And it was partially because of his faith, how he carried out his life and how he lived.
Rudy, how did your time as a student athlete in general and a football player in particular help prepare you for life?
I'm a verbal processor, so I'm sitting here thinking about this particular question and thinking about just faces of people that came through my life and the people that encouraged me. Um, I once had that framework of like, "Hey, nobody can stop you. You have to do this. You have to fully invest. You have to have that Tom Brady mindset of be a little bit crazy and then go about it, and continue to push yourself to be the best version of yourself and put all the haters behind you your entire life." Um, Football changed that for me. Time at Campbell as a student athlete changed that for me. Honestly, I was here almost 12 years, from the time of 2010 until fall of 2021. Um, so for me, I see myself, yes, as a student athlete, but I see myself as a Campbell alum. I see myself as a person who was a part of this community. And so I actually distinctly see, yes, student athlete, but I hold that part of Campbell to be even larger than that time as a student athlete because of the people that were here that meant so much to me, that invested in me, that taught me that taking time out of your day just to sit and talk and have a conversation is important, that nobody has everything figured out, that you matter and that the conversation you're having about your purpose in life is important. And that's what this time is for. So exploring those things, discovering purpose, discovering what makes you who you are is going to lead you to more fulfillment in your life and what you do based off of those things. And Campbell gave me a chance to do that. Campbell gave me the right people to do that. I used to sit in Tracy Connor's office over at the Office of Spiritual Life and talk for hours. I would sit in Elaine Dawson's office over at the Divinity School and talk for hours. And Dr. Hogan would come out and we would have so many conversations about like what I wanted to do and what I was thinking through this time. And I think how often I asked about them. They just wanted to pour into me and talk to me and get to know who I was. And that's what makes this place a special place. That's what gave me a chance is to have conversations with people to learn about who I am as a person. And now I want to pass that on to other people.
Mike, you mentioned, 100 out of 500 basically in your high school graduating class. That's a top fifth. That's pretty darn good in my opinion. Not only do you get your undergraduate degree here, but then you continue on for 2 graduate degrees. Tell us about your what drove you to an MED and Master's in Divinity.
Um, the first degree is almost one by mistake. It is it was a degree like, hey, I was a psych major and people tell you you have to go to grad school after this. Okay, I'm gonna stay at Campbell, and I had the opportunity to volunteer for the football team right after I graduated. We were still growing as a program, so, like, the money wasn't there to necessarily, help me to be a full-time graduate assistant. I don't think we even really had full-fledged graduate assistants like most programs did at that time. So I was actually working at the School of Education and then also getting my master's in education and, volunteering my time with football, all during that time, and it was kind of a you have interest in psych, counseling, Master's of Education in counseling is the next best step. Hop in there, see what happens. Um, that's where I met people like Tracy Connor, but that's also where I began to explore deeper what academia and what higher education has to offer. I began to determine who I was actually as a student at that time. And that I kind of like this thing. I kind of like being on a college campus. I like being around people who are learning more. And so that's what that first degree provided me. Also, it taught me that I didn't want to go into mental health counseling.
Mhm.
That is a tough field.
Yeah.
Kudos to everybody. I want to give a shout out to Sam Turnipseed over at the med school. Fantastic human being. She helped me through so much. Mental health counseling is one of the biggest areas of need across college campuses, and continuing to invest in those areas makes a difference in the lives of so many students and student athletes in particular. And so for me, realizing I didn't want to do that in particular, I wanted to further explore how I what part of me could stay involved in higher education and what part of me could continue to learn more. And you talked about me finding my faith more during my time at Campbell. I think that was the question I still had left unanswered. When I advise students today, I talk about grad school in the sense of do you have questions that you still have left unanswered? And how is the best way to explore that? And sometimes it is a graduate degree. And for me, a Master of Divinity offered me a chance to do that, but it also offered me a chance to live out a portion of what I believe my calling was, which was to engage and to pour into other people like myself or who were like myself, who were trying to figure out who their identity was, particularly at the time, student athletes. Um, and so I went into divinity school, and at first I was working as a youth pastor, and ended up moving from that to team chaplain slash office of spiritual life graduate assistant at Campbell, and that really allowed me to engage my religious philosophy side in divinity school, and then also the pastoral care and counseling side to be with college students on a day to day basis as they explore and discover who they are. And there was probably and I don't wanna say this to discredit any of my other time at Campbell, because I think it did allow for me to get to this point. There was probably no better or more rewarding time that I spent at Campbell than the time where I could just pour into other students and to give advice, to impart wisdom, but also to learn about their perspective and their outlook on life and why they wanted to do the things that they wanted to do. I could be the people that I used to go and sit in their office. Like Faith Beam used to listen to me talk all the time, and now I got to sit and listen to students talk all the time. I could be that person. Um, Elaine Dawson, I already mentioned, and of course Tracy Connor. Those offices and those chairs that I probably wore out just sitting there talking for all those hours. I got to be that person for student athletes. I got to be that person for students across the campus, and that was the ultimate reward.
Rudy, what did your I don't want to say like job description or whatever, because I'm sure that, the title of team chaplain has a different viewpoint in everywhere there is one, whether it's someone who is there for an extra, someone to lean on to for personal advice, or to hold devotions or lead prayer or anything. Like what were some of the ways that you leaned into that job for the football team?
One thing that, Faith Beam taught me was presence, and caring about this presence wherever I went and what I did. It made an impact, and sometimes just showing up was one of the most important things. Faith has the ability to be in a lot of different places at once. And so, watching her leadership and being able to do that myself, I just wanted to be on the sideline
Mhm.
at that point. I was no longer coaching. I didn't have any coaching responsibilities. I just wanted to be there. It could be a question about faith. It could be a question about Marshbanks. It could be a question about if football, in my opinion on that, or like this rap artist, or like this style of music, or like my perspective on what was going on in the world, or it could be directly related to like some understanding that they had about their own faith. And it wouldn't have happened if I just wasn't there. And so anytime I could get to just go back over and to be present, to sit, to listen, to stand. My legs at that point were getting tired from standing on the sideline of that turf and dress shoes. I don't know why I ever did that. I wore dress shoes on the sideline of that turf field. My feet were killing me, but I knew it was important to be there and to stand with those guys and support them in any way possible.
Our guest today on Tales from the Creek is Campbell football alum Michael Rudisill. Rudy, how did the opportunity come about for you to go to work in the School of Medicine? And tell us a little bit about your time there.
I I often laugh about the many different things that I've looked at Campbell as far as applying to and trying to get opportunities, and also just trying to extend my time. There was a student athlete once told me, "Hey Rudy, Campbell doesn't need you," and I took that to heart. First, I was like, "Ouch, that really hurts." Then I was like, "You're right. It doesn't need me. It will survive without me, and that's perfectly fine. But while I'm here, what can I do?" And so I think part of me wanted to always stay connected in some way. And at the time, I was leaving my divinity program. I was looking at jobs in higher education. I had kind of figured out through a senior synthesis project in divinity school that they give us that being around people and being around people in higher education is super important to me. And so, what can I do to do that? Dr. Jorgensen over in the divinity school would often say or reference this podcast at the time called The Next Right Thing. I still use this. So if any of my career students ever listen to this, they're like, always mention that podcast again. I actually never listened to the podcast, but the gist of it was, what is the next right thing in our life? What is the next right step? And this particular time was a new mother who was trying to balance all the different tasks and duties that you have while also caring for a newborn. And like sometimes the next right thing is to brush your teeth. And that stuck with me. The next right thing for me at the time was to stay in higher education,
Mhm.
and so to apply to as many jobs as possible, and that job came open. My roommate at the time, former student athlete Jeff Kennedy, for the soccer team, he was going into PT school. Um, there was other people in my life that were connected to the medical field, and so I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give this a shot." Admissions, I get to talk to people and travel around a little bit. I know Campbell. So what can I do here? Maybe I can bring my own spin on what it means to recruit people into a medical school. I guess I interviewed well and they gave me a shot. And honestly, thank you to the people that gave me a shot over at QSOM, because that helped me to finally realize the importance that higher education and guiding students really was in my life. Um, there's a there's a Greek word, telos, which means endpoint or purpose. And Dr. Myers would be like, "It means more than that." She was
Mhm.
my Greek instructor in divinity school, but um, really. that's how I often viewed things, was this telos or endpoint had this career or title attached to it. And what I came to see and through my time in divinity school, then ultimately in this first position, is that like it's not the position title. Your endpoint, your goal, your purpose is not your title. And it's never going to be your title. Your title cannot fulfill all those things. Your endpoint is something that is made up of multiple values that you have in your life, from your faith to the things you enjoy doing, the things you want to be surrounded by. And you try to capture as many things as you can in that bubble as you work. And so for me, part of my job was getting to talk to people on a daily basis. I love that. That's a part of my telos. That's a part of where I want to be and what I do. It allowed me to help people. I'm a helper. I want to go out there in the world and make sure they can find pathways into what they are doing. And so it connected me to those parts of myself that I knew I needed to be engaged with. That's why I took that job. That's why I really felt like I was becoming more of who I was, being in that world and in that space.
Rudy, among Campbell football alumni, you talked about you're not one of the foundation guys, but you certainly are a bridge guy from the Coach Steele era, into the Coach Mentor era, and now with Coach Braxton Harris here. What makes those bonds so strong with those football alumni guys?
I think first it's the stories, it's the time, like I mentioned, going around at the breakfast table pregame, or it's seeing hardship through the lens of an athlete, of losses and victories, small victories, whatever they may be, while also experiencing life together and to grow up together in a lot of ways. That's what bonds us together. Um, to experience my teammates' celebrations and joy. Numerous teammates got married, and I was able to participate or be a part of their wedding. I was able to watch them become fathers. It was those moments back where we spent summers together and there was nothing to do in Bowie's Creek except make up games and play video games, and that's what we did. Have conversations about life surrounding a fire pit and our $283 a month, rent in on Anna Street. Uh, Having conversations around a fire and just learning about each other and dreaming about what was next and who we could become and staying together.
Next for you was your new position at Duke as in career counseling services. Um, Tell us a little bit about your responsibilities there and how your time at Campbell prepared you for that next step.
Yeah. We had a career counseling, component in class in my master's education program, and I enjoyed that. I actually developed out a whole presentation, for student athletes and finding career paths and career journeys. At the time, I had no idea that's something that I was going to be doing down the road. I just was like, "Oh, this is cool, helping connect people to what they wanna do." Um, when I was at the med school, of course, I was exposed to numerous people across the healthcare field, and that allowed me to gain a great deal of knowledge. Ultimately, when the position became available at Duke, I had always been a big fan of Duke, actually, not because of basketball, despite what most people think. I was a big fan of Duke just because of the prestige it held in the state. And then also the Divinity School as well had some of the best thought leaders and leaders in the field of interest for me. So I always had was attracted to potentially working there. Um, and so the position became available. They were seeking somebody that had knowledge of healthcare and biomedical sciences. I had the healthcare knowledge. I needed to learn a little bit of the biomedical science. Hey, job seekers, if you feel like you're not 100% qualified, that's okay. Sometimes it's like 40 to 60, and that's also okay. You can learn on the job. They're not going to invest in somebody that's 100% qualified. They want you to grow. Um, that was this team at Duke. They wanted me to grow. I had a great knowledge of what it took for pre-health students to get into med school and other health professions. And they wanted to invest in my background in counseling and then also divinity because of my outlook on purpose and understanding who people were and how that ties in with their purpose and fulfillment in the jobs that they want.
It feels like you've answered this my next question multiple times, but I'm going to say it again. What's a couple of your go-to advice points that you give to students?
Yeah. um, I always tell students when they sit down with me, I'm like, "Do you want me to talk you out of this or talk you into this?" Because I wanna know where a student's coming from. I want to know what's bringing them to ask me questions to begin with. Some people are looking for the more transactional of like, "Hey, I need a job,"
Hmm.
or, "Hey, like, tell me how to do this so I can just leave and go do it." Um, some people generally just do not know where to begin, and I think that's more people than people realize, is we're all figuring it out. I'm 35, will be 36 here in November, and I'm still figuring it out. I'm a new dad, I'm figuring it out. That's okay. Going as I'm never gonna be fully prepared to be a parent. That sounds scary, but that's also okay. We're making it work. It's happening. Um, as people look at the next step and what they're doing and what they hope to do, they need to realize that it can't be attached to that position title, and that's okay. That it's also okay to have different values. It's okay to value money. It's okay to value location. It's okay to value something that is working for a common good. It's okay. I have a lot of students that go into consulting and nobody knows what consulting is, but they go into consulting and I'm like, if that's what you want to do, then go do it. All I can ask is that you truly invest in that opportunity, that you spend time, that you give it a chance, and that you don't go into it as a stopgap. Things in our lives don't have to just be a way to like or a stepping stone to be a stepping stone to the next opportunity that we get to. Things in our life have ability to be a much deeper well that we can draw from, that we can pull up more and more resources from to figure out who we are and figure out components of our life. Um, that's what this is all about is whatever we engage with, whoever we talk to, it's not just about like what information can you give me today? It's about their story, how they got to where they are, the information, wisdom that they share, and what pieces they can pull from that. I often say that people are their own dictionaries. They have definitions that they have uh, gathered throughout their entire lives, and they're filling out those definitions as we go. As we talk to people, we're learning new definitions of new things, and we're pulling those in and creating our own dictionaries, and we're able to develop out what that phrase means for us and how it can be applied in our own life. It may not be a perfect fit, but that's why we adapt it and mold it to who we are and the things that we need.
Like telling us a little bit about your young family and how things look for you these days.
Yeah. Constantly busy. I'm actually an introvert, even though I work a lot with people. And so I do have to find time to have that decompression time, actually go hang out at the mill, over in Fuquay Arena all the time with 2 of my divinity school buddies, Colin Kroll and Thomas Ferguson. I gotta have to give them a shout out. Um, for the reasons that they have poured into my life. But then also as a parent, it gives you a whole new perspective on the things that you want to leave behind in legacy. And not in the sense of like, I want my child to be some great star on the football field, or I want them to be some great leader or celebrity. It's a matter of what daily lessons am I instilling with them? Does my son know that I'm present? Does he know my face and recognize me? Um, does he see how I talk to my wife? Does he see how we communicate back and forth as a partnership? Does he see the joy that we can have on a day-to-day basis and the laughs we share? Does he see also us share a full range of emotions and happiness and laughter, of course, but also sadness and being afraid of certain things in the world? I hope he sees those things, and that's what parenthood has meant to me, and that's what this stage of life has meant to me is exploring how I get to impart that not just on college students anymore, but someone that I live with and get to raise.
I'm always curious about, how someone met their spouse. Claudia and I, a lot of people know we met at a soccer team party after the Parents' Day match in the fall of 1986, and a whole set of circumstances led us to this point where we were introduced by a mutual friend, and we had no idea who each other. And we've been together almost 40 years since.
Yeah.
How did you and Morgan meet?
Yeah. I don't know if she would actually, no, at this point, we've told enough people that we met on Hinge. It's a dating app meant to be deleted, so this is not an advertisement, but we met on a dating app, Hinge, and it was funny at the time. I had set my parameters all the way to Raleigh because we're in Bowie's Creek, and like I needed to meet new people. And actually, I was living a little bit closer to Raleigh at the time. So it worked out. It was also the height of the pandemic, and
Wow.
um, I had a rule. I was going to, actually FaceTime people before I met them and get to know them to see if we vibe first before I guess we risked our lives to go out
Right.
and meet and grab dinner or something like that. And so we met over a dating app, and our first date was at White Hill, Kitchen and Brewing over there off I can't remember what street it is, but it overlooks the city of Raleigh.
Mhm.
We still go back to the city. We've actually taken
Right on
places.
Boylan Avenue, right,
Yes,
looks
yes.
overlooks the, downtown Raleigh and the railroad tracks going through there and everything, sure.
Absolutely, and we just hit it off. Her brother actually happened to live down in Angier at the
Oh,
time,
wow.
and so it worked out. She on visits to come see them, she would stop by and see me, and vice versa. I needed to get out of Bowie's Creek. I'd been here 10 years at the time, and I was like, "Hey, I need to go to explore." I actually had never been to Raleigh, like, downtown exploring restaurants really until me and my wife met. Like, I had gone to church in downtown Raleigh for a bit, but it wasn't extensive. I didn't explore with the landscape. And so when we started dating, we used to walk around Raleigh all the time to view the landscape, to see the businesses, to frequent places like a place at the table or transfer food hall or anything like that. We used to actually just walk and take a look.
When you have free time, and, and I understand now with having a toddler running around, free time is a very relative term. How do you like to spend it?
Um, I had this conversation the other day with someone. Now my free time is spent with my son and my wife. That's what I wanna do. Um, that's a sacrifice that you make, yes, because you are leaving behind the times where I could play video games for hours at night after my wife had fallen asleep or even before that, when I was single and I could just play video games and go out and hang out with friends at any drop of the hat. Now it's a lot more structured in the sense of, like, when I'm not working, when I'm not having conversations, I want to be with them. So much changes in a moment's notice or overnight. This morning, my son said no to something. So I don't think he knew what it meant, but those are the things that change overnight, and you get to see their brain light up, and there's something so special about that, to know that, like, "Hey, I've gotta teach him what no means now," or, "We've got to go outside twice a day to make sure he's tired enough to sleep overnight," and so your focus and time attention is devoted to that. One of my teammates, he just, told me that he's gonna be a dad for the first time, and super proud of him, and I was thinking of all the advice I wanna give him, and I'm like, "Wait a minute. My advice is that everybody's gonna give you advice, and you need to take what, uh, actually applies to you and your situation, and, of course, it may be helpful at the time or it may not be helpful, and that's okay. Just do what works for you and your family." And so much of my time now, what works for us and my family is when I'm home, we are together. We are phones down, we are TV off, we are spending time with one another, and that's what I want. There's a lot of noise, and it's a privilege to turn things off. It's a privilege to have to or to tune things out, and I think it's a valuable part of us being citizens to stay in touch and in tune with what is going on in the world. But I also think it's important at times for your mental health to put things down and to be present, to be with people. We talked about presence across a college campus, to be and sit with people at the university, but also in your personal life, to know that the time that you get to spend is fleeting in a lot of ways, and that moments change and moments transpire that are gone. And you need to invest in those. You need to sit still. You need to watch and to listen, to be without other distractions and to fully be in that moment.
Rudy, your bio on the Duke website, lists you as a writer or blogger about the intersection of faith, politics, mental health, and culture. Those are pretty deep topics to address singularly. You want to share any of your ideas with our listeners today?
You can check it out. I haven't added much to it lately, but there's a blog where faith and life collide. It's a Wix Press or Wix site. And much of my stuff now is actually I'm transcribing my perspective of history and then my perspective on like how my wife and I were feeling during certain transitions and moments in history for our kids down the road. That's where I'm spending a lot of my time writing right now is writing out an email or a blog post for them. and sharing that out. And of course, I still write on occasion, thinking about us as humanity and how we interact with one another and how we make so many big deals out of things that actually truly do not matter. And the things that do matter, we treat as faux pas. We do not talk about it. We do not engage with it enough. We do not actually sit and listen to one another. Vince Manto, my roommate, when he was up here, we sat and we talked for an hour and a half about life, our perspective on things. We sat and listened to another. How many people just sit and listen for people that may not share all the same beliefs with them anymore? Um, that's important. It's tough. It is a difficult conversation. Writing gave me a chance to express those things, to make sure when I am talking and when I am speaking, I've done the research. Thanks to Divinity School for actually having me do an exegesis and to pull out different parts of research because now I know a lot more about research and looking into information. Um, and so when I write and when I put pieces together for a blog post or now for my kids, I I actually want to sit down and say, why do I believe this? Where does this come from? what what information matters to this? What is the context of what I am writing, and how do I explain that context? And then how do I share that not only in written form, but when I talk to people about things that I believe in and the people that I believe in, the things that I hold to be true and the things that I value. Why do I believe those things, and how do I communicate that to someone who has no knowledge or a ton of knowledge? Um, how do I become the best friend or human to the person across from me, my neighbor? How do I treat them?
Rudy, this next one just, in we work in higher education, and and we're both tied deeply to college athletics. Can we fix this college athletics thing that's going on around us right now?
It's gonna look different. Um, I think as a person who used to be averse to change, I was deeply skeptical of anything that drastically changed the things that we hold near and dear. And the landscape of college athletics is something that I hold near and dear because it was something that I grew up and valued much of my life. And the traditions of schools, the traditions of what it meant to be a student athlete. But when I also look at it, I know that things can't last forever and that things must evolve with time. And so can we fix it? Can we change it? I don't know if I'm the person or you're the person Stan at this point to change it. I look to the leaders of student athletes that are beginning to emerge and their thoughts and what they need and what this current landscape looks like to be able to speak out and to I want to elevate their voices in this conversation as much as people have listened to athletic directors and coaches of the past. Those are important voices, yes, but then also the student athletes. What is this moment? What are they raising to meet this moment with? How are they advocating for themselves? How are they advocating for differences? How are they advocating for the amount of revenue they may drive at larger schools? How are they advocating at smaller schools like ours for what they need in this moment to be a student athlete in the world to set them up for success? That is important to me. So fixing it, I don't know if it's as much fixing it as it is evolving and learning and growing and actually bringing as many people to the conversation as possible to come to a conclusion together of like, hey, this is what it's going to look like at the FCS level. This is what it's going to look like at the FBS level. And this is the best case scenario that puts student athletes first, that puts support staff at first, that puts all the people that make this show run together work and it puts them in a better place. I don't know if we have enough conversation about that. I think we often think about the high salaries that some coaches have across the country, and we forget about the student athletes and the work that they put in, but then also the support staff and the work they put in, the hours. I think about athletic training and the days that they spend and the lack of vacation. I think of people like yourself, Stan, that are traveling around with the team in the country because you love the games, you love the sports that are part of this. But at the same time, like your voice matters to this conversation and how this evolution takes place and what it looks like. That's what fixes this if we want to use the word fix. If we encourage to include as many voices that are actually making a difference in these areas, that's what's going to change things.
Finally, Rudy, can you put into words how Campbell University and this Buies Creek community have impacted your life?
I think there's like a 20-page document that I wrote, that senior synthesis that I mentioned.
Mhm.
So those are all the words. It's not a public document, but uh, it is. It truly was a transformational period of my life. And in many ways, it was a season of my life, and at times, I didn't know if I was ever going to leave that season. I think there was longing at some point to say, "Hey, what else exists beyond Campbell?" And now I'm in that moment, and I get to be a proud alum. I get to say, "Oh, look at what the university is doing right now. Look at this baseball team rolling. Look at these changes that have been made around the football stadium," and I get to go back and cheer and just be a fan. Um, so the transformational side of things of helping me to evolve, to discover who I was and what I was called to do and how I was meant to impact people without a title, without certain qualifications as far as like salary goes or anything like that. It helped me to better see that what I meant to go is to go and to do and to lead and to be around people, to share stories, to communicate with one another, because that's what people did for me while I was here. Um, they transformed the kid that came from suburban Charlotte who really had thought he had enough ideas or thought he knew a lot about the world, and helped me to understand in small rural Bowie's Creek, Harnett County, what the world looks like in multiple places. From here, I traveled to Israel, I traveled to South Africa, I traveled across the country with a football team. I saw many different people and the way that everybody lives on a day-to-day basis, and that taught me so much about what I can do in my own house and who I can be for other people. And sometimes it doesn't mean I need to have a six-figure salary. It doesn't mean that I need to be on TV. It doesn't mean that I need to be a politician. It means that I can make a difference with what I have where I'm at.
I'm Stan Cole, and our guest today on Tales from the Creek has been Campbell football alum Michael Rudi Rudisill. Thank you, Rudi, for sharing your Tales from the Creek.
Thanks, Dan.